Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 107. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going over an Alola team. Now Alola really does feel like the generation where Game Freak started to get serious about double battles, since there was a lot more double battle mechanics introduced. And a lot of the Alolan Pokemon feel like they're quite a few stat points off of fitting in with the big game Pokemon. And in Generation 7, they still had to contend with like Mega Evolutions and all that jazz. However, in a lower power format like this, a lot of the Alolan Pokemon feel pretty good. Starting off, we have obviously the best Alolan Pokemon and best support Pokemon of all time, VGC Cat, aka Incineroar. And I'm not going to try to blow you away with an Incineroar set that absolutely boggles your mind today. We're just using an Assault Vest Incineroar with the moves Fake Out, Flare Blitz, and a Knockoff, both of which are stabs, and U-Turn for our pivoting on Incineroar so that we can swap into our Trick Room Mons, hopefully whenever the Trick Room is about to go up. Incineroar, of course, going to be Intimidate so that we can lower the attack of the opposing Pokemon on the field, and we're Terra Grass so that we can be avoiding powder moves, but also Grass gives us some pretty good resistances. Moving down the line here, we've got Serena, the questionably first Pokemon to have an ability to negate priority, because it depends whether or not Serena or Bruxish came out, but Serena was definitely the one that people preferred over Bruxish for the longest time, and then we got Fergaraf, who is mostly preferred over Serena. But Serena's good, it's doing alright for itself. We got the very strong stab power up into the opponent here, and we have the triple axle for some good ice type damage into other grass types in the format, and we have the taunt in order to stop the opponent from going status moves on their mons, and we have the wide lens in order to increase all of the accuracy of our moves, so it's pretty unlikely that we will be missing a power whip or triple axle. And we are Terra Ghost on Serena, not because we want to avoid fake outs, because that's what our ability Queenly Majesty does, it negates all priority attacks, but also Ghost is just kind of a nice Terra type to have to dodge like a fighting type move or a normal type move every once in a while. Up next, we have Vikavolt, and Vikavolt is a very high special attack Pokemon, and it is also the slowest bug type, which makes Vikavolt very prime for being a Trick Room Pokemon, and since electric type damage is not very common in the format, and Vikavolt has such a high special attack stat, Vikavolt is debatably one of the better electric type attackers, also having some other good stab in Bug, which usually Bug is the thing that drags down Vikavolt, but with Terastallization allowing us to Terastallize into electric, and the fact that we're Levitate, we can make it so that we have no weaknesses, also no resistances except for Steel and other electric types, but no weaknesses is pretty neat. And to further boost the power of our electric type moves, we have the Magnet for our Thunderbolt, and our Volt Switch for whenever we want to pivot Vikavolt out for whatever reason, and the Bug Buzz, which is very strong, all of our stabs right here, but mostly we want to be dealing electric damage with Vikavolt. Up next, we have the Alolan Ninetales, and I decided to make this one shiny since we've used Alolan Ninetales so many times, and what better times to be using a shiny Alolan Ninetales than the generation that it was introduced in. Alola was also the first generation to introduce regional variant Pokemon, and I gotta say, I was there whenever Alolan Ninetales was revealed, and it was definitely the Pokemon that broke my brain the most, that they were doing old Pokemon but with different types as regional variants. Seeing the Alolan Ninetales, that was a special feeling. I remember that pretty fondly. I think it was Sandslash and Alolan Exeggutor that were released at the same time for the regional variant announcement, but Alolan Ninetales was definitely the star of the show. But moving on to our actual Alolan Ninetales set, we have the Blizzard Spam for whenever we set up the snow with our snow warning, and then we also have the Aurora Veil in order to make us tankier, either for when we're trying to set up the Trick Room, or towards the end of the Trick Room, we can bring in Ninetales and then pressure an Aurora Veil in order to try and keep our Pokemon alive, as well as we have the Encore to try and stop opposing Pokemon in their tracks from going for things like Fake Out whenever we don't have Serena on the field, or just status moves that are kind of useless. We can lock them with Encore and then they can't damage us for a while. And we have the Light Clay on the Alola Ninetales in order to extend the duration of the Aurora Veil, and we are Terra Water because water gives us so many good resistances as an Ice Fairy type. Next up, we have the Oranguru, and Oranguru is going to be our big Trick Room setter here, as we have the Inner Focus ability to make it so that we cannot be faked out, just in case we don't lead Serena for whatever reason. But also, Oranguru, of course, has its signature move, Instruct, which allows it to force its target to immediately use the move that it used previously, which means that whenever we get a Pokemon in under Trick Room, they can use a move, and then Oranguru will instruct it so that they use it again, and we can deal a lot of big damage. More than likely with Vikavolt or Araquanid are the big two Pokemon that want to be instructed for their big damaging moves. As well as we also have the knockoff on Oranguru in order to get rid of the opponent's items, which co-aligns with our Terra Dark that we have for our resistances, but also so that we are not getting prankster taunted. And we also just have the Psychic Noise in order to keep the opponent's Pokemon from going for healing for 2 turns. We can prevent them from healing. And of course, Trick Room, set up Trick Room. The whole reason that Oranguru is here, pretty much. And we're Safety Goggles so that we are not being affected by powder moves. And last but not least, we are slotting Araquanid on this team just because Araquanid is such a strong, consistent water type under Trick Room because of our Water Bubble ability, which makes it so that we take less damage from fire, but also increases our water type damage and means that we can't be burned, and we can do a lot of water type damage with our Liquidation of the opponent, especially if Oranguru is instructing Araquanid to use a Liquidation twice, and we use Alola Ninetales to make it so that the opponent doesn't have Sun, then we're in a really good spot, as well as we have the Leech Life to get some of our health back, and the Wide Guard and the Protect in order to try and save us from taking incredible amounts of damage. And we also have the Clear Amulet on Araquanid to mainly avoid Intimidates, and we're Terra Water just because water is already good defensive type and will even further be boosting the power of our water type damage. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up we have a battle against an Indeedee Sneasel Sun team where they can Side Spam us or they can Fire Spam us, but they also have the option for the Corviknight endgame, which is definitely something that we have to watch for. So the game starts and we lead Incineroar and Oranguru, and the opponent leads Sneasler and Indeedee, which makes a lot of sense. And we don't have a great turnout here as Sneasler gets to White Herb off the Intimidate and immediately just close combats into Incineroar, taking it out of the game there. And Indeedee is going to trick a Choice Scarf onto Oranguru, meaning Oranguru is now locked into the Trick Room. We swap out with Oranguru so that we can get Araquanid in, and we try to Volt Switch into Sneasler to take it out, but Indeedee gets massive Expanding Force damage into both Pokemon here, as now Torkoal comes in, and we try to Liquidation that slot. We do get a defense drop on Torkoal, but Torkoal does Rocky Helmet damage back to us, and we just Bug Buzz in order to take out Indeedee so they can't Expanding Force us again. But now Sneasler returns to the field, and it just goes for a Protect, and we Wide Guard with a Araquanid so that Torkoal can't hit us here with a Spread move, and it did go for a Spread move in Heat Wave, and we just Thunderbolt into Torkoal to take that out. And Corviknight is revealed to be our last Pokemon, who also gets a Psychic Seed special defense boost. We Liquidation and Thunderbolt into Sneasler in order to deal with it, and Corviknight gets off an Iron Defense. So now the opponent is fully invested in this Corviknight endgame, which might pan out for them depending on how it goes here. Araquanid gets some Leech Life into Corviknight as Corviknight set up another Iron Defense and tries to Power Trip Oranguru, but Oranguru lives, and Leech Life is doing less damage because of Corviknight's Iron Defenses. But we get off the Trick Room here, and here I bet that they were going to try and KO Oranguru, but they actually decided to Power Trip into Araquanid, so Oranguru resets the Trick Room, unfortunately. Corviknight just takes a turn to rest here, and Oranguru gets up the Trick Room again, and now we swap out Oranguru into Araquanid, and we catch the Power Trip on Vikavolt's Protect. So here we swap in Oranguru again in order to Leech Life, but also to try and sack Oranguru, and Oranguru is the Pokemon that does effectively get sacked. But now we get a full damage turn where we Leech Life into Corviknight, and the Vikavolt's Bug Buzz is going to deal enough damage to take out the Terra Dark Corviknight. What's especially stunk about that match is that we did have a way to keep the Corviknight from roosting with Oranguru's Psychic Noise, it's just that we couldn't go for it because the Corviknight was Terra Dark. Also, there was a turn where, as you just saw, I manually swapped out Vikavolt, where what I should have done instead is I should have Terra Electric Vikavolt and then used Terra Electric Volt Switch in order to swap out Vikavolt after that one Protect, and where I was trying to sack Oranguru. Here we have Fire, Water, Grass, and Dual Grass, and Chestnut Rillaboom, and then Palafin and Cinnamoroar, and they also have the option for the Blood Moon Ursa Luna Trick Room mode. The battle starts out and we lead Alola Ninetales and Vikavolt, hoping to see one of the grass types, but is actually the Blood Moon and the Farigiraf Trick Room mode. We immediately swap in Incineroar so that it is Assault Vest and it'll take less special damage here in case Ursaluna goes for the Blood Moon, and it did in fact go for the Blood Moon into Incineroar, which Incineroar takes pretty good. And they're also Terra Ghost Ursaluna, which means that we took less damage than they would if they were Terra Normal. Here we encore the Farigiraf so that it can't go for Trick Room this turn because that would have been bad. And we get Blizzard damage into both Pokemon, and we get that knockoff that we wanted last turn into Ursaluna in order to take out Ursaluna, which is pretty big for Vikavolt. And Farigiraf is dealing some pretty consistent Hyper Voice damage to us here. Blizzard is going to do some good damage to Farigiraf, and we get the U-turn out on Farigiraf, which allows us to go back into Vikavolt, and this is going to cause Ninetales to get taken out, and Farigiraf's encore ends, but now we bring Incineroar back in and get the Intimidate down into Chestnut. Chestnut does manage to get off the belly drum here, and then gets its Citrus Berry eaten, so it doesn't take too much damage. Farigiraf not prone to being U-turned again, and Bug Buzz barely not able to KO Chestnut there, as Rillaboom now enters the fray, and Grassy Glide is resisted by Vikavolt and does not take out Vikavolt. Incineroar gets taken back out again, and we Volt Switch Rillaboom again in order to, yet again, bring back out Incineroar to get Intimidate down into Rillaboom. Not so much Chestnut, doesn't matter much into Chestnut at this point. And since we have the Serena on the field, the Chestnut cannot go for Grassy Glide into Incineroar to try and take it out. But the opponent swaps in Farigiraf here, wanting to catch a Fake Out, and they do in fact catch it. But Serena is faster than Chestnut, thankfully, and gets the triple axle into Chestnut. And now it's just Rillaboom and Farigiraf versus us, as Serena gets the Power Whip into Farigiraf, but Rillaboom gets the Wood Hammer into Incineroar. And our last Pokemon is Vikavolt, who's pretty low on health at this point, but the opponent forgets that you can't Grassy Glide, which they couldn't really do anything else other than go for the Grassy Glide there, because Serena was faster than Rillaboom. And lastly, we have a battle against a Reg A Rain team here, where it looks like they're trying to use Palafin as their main source of damage, but also every Pokemon on this team except for King Gambit can kind of be considered a support Pokemon for Palafin. So we lead Oranguru and Vikavolt here, seeing that Vikavolt's probably going to be pretty important, as Kingambit and Palafin do hit the field, and they immediately swap into Serena here as we Terra Dark Oranguru and protect Vikavolt so that we can get off the Trick Room here. But the Kingambit goes for Iron Head, which does more damage to us than if we had caught the Kowtow Cleave, which makes me think for some reason that this Kingambit doesn't have Kowtow Cleave, which is a little bit scary. We Thunderbolt Kingambit, and we instruct the Thunderbolts again in order to kill Kingambit, since the Bug Buzz into the Serena was a super easy thing, and we're not really threatened by the Serena at that point anyways. Here we swap in Serena to catch the priority Jet Punch so that it doesn't damage Vikavolt, and Vikavolt gets off the Thunderbolt, but the Hurricane catches Serena, which means that our form of priority negation is gone, but now they bring in their own Serena and Pelipper. Pelipper gets Helping Handed, and we Thunderbolt Pelipper, but here Pelipper gets paralyzed, and the paralysis makes it so that Pelipper is slower than Oranguru. So Pelipper gets to actually get off that Helping Hand, Weather Ball into Vikavolt and Chaos Vikavolt, and we do not get the Instruct into Vikavolt, which is kind of a misplay on my part. Like, I really should have Thunderbolted and then used Oranguru to just knock off the Pelipper, because then we would have at least gotten rid of Pelipper here, and then Ninetales could protect out the last turn of Trick Room. And since we're in Snow, giving us a defense boost, and Serena's a physical attacker, we can just Blizzard spam into Serena in order to end the game. But now Pelipper is going to protect, as our Ninetales also protects, and we try knocking off the Pelipper, but the Serena Power Whips our Oranguru here, and now Pelipper can just afford to spam Wide Guard as we Aurora Veil in order to try and increase the damage, but the Power Whip from Serena is just doing so much damage, and we are hoping that the Pelipper gets a Paralysis turn on the Blizzard here, which it actually needed to get on that last turn, because as we'll see, the Blizzard does manage to KO Pelipper, but it does not get Serena. So if we had KO'd Pelipper on the turn earlier, we would have had the game, but because Pelipper only got paralyzed on one turn too late, we unfortunately lose the game to the Serena. So just a really, really unfortunate circumstance there where Vikavolt got the paralysis on Pelipper that ended up absolutely throwing us that game there, but that's just how it goes sometimes. What we also could have done is I could have just Volt switched the Pelipper in order to swap out, and then I would have swapped out into Ninetales. And then if Pelipper had either gone for Hurricane or Weather Ball into the Ninetales slot, it would have done much less damage than what the Weather Ball did there. Or the Hurricane would have had a chance to flat out miss Ninetales. There you have it. That was the Alola team. And unfortunately, with this Alola team, we didn't get to feature any new Pokemon from Alola, mostly because I've used all of them in at least some way, just because, as I said before, they are all kind of at least practical, give or take a Gumshoes, who I did almost put Gumshoes on this team. I was very close to using Gumshoes on this team because it is a slow Pokemon that enjoys the Trick Room. I'm just not really sure what Pokemon I would take off this team to use Gumshoes, like, even as a joke with. Because you need a Araquanid for the White Guard, and then Ninetales it's the Snow, and Aurora Veil for everybody. It makes it so that we don't have to play into Sun teams as hard with Araquanid, and Vigavolt is just such a big electric dealer, and Serena's Queenly Majesty, and Incineroar is VGC Cat. So there's not really a Pokemon that I could have taken off to use Gumshoes on this team, but also Gumshoes probably isn't getting put on a team now, so sorry Gumshoes. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video and even consider subscribing because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you.